Hello everyone, my name is Per Byman. I'm the director of NRC Flüchtlingshilfe in Germany, and we're happy to be hosting this film, Tiny Souls. And we're very lucky to have the director of the film, Dina Naser, with us here. Dina is a Jordanian director, writer and producer with Palestinian roots, holding a BA in art and graphic design. And Dina kind of worked her way through a variety of television film productions and then started directing and producing independently. And I believe that your first works were inspired by stories from your homeland. Shamia from 2011 portrays an aging Palestinian woman living in a refugee camp in Jordan. Then you had your award-winning 1 Minute in 2015, telling the story of a woman living in Gaza while under attack in 2014. And Tiny Souls is a documentary project which was first realized in a 9-minute format, but it is now your first feature-length film, as I understand it. Welcome, Dina. Very nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit, how did you first meet the family that was seeing the film, and what was it that made you decide that this is the story that you want to portray?
The first time I went to the camp, I had no clear vision of making a film that will take me 4 years. Actually, my intention was to go understand more about the situation of the camp, hear the people, record some sound bites where I can really understand the situation back in Syria, away from all the media reportage that we were bombarded with. So we were confused, and we really needed to hear some true voices. So I went there to see the situation in the camp. I wanted to record with people. People refused to film with me. As if you're like when you point a camera towards someone, as if you are pointing a gun towards them. They were terrified, they were very sensitive, and nobody really were able to open up and speak. So it was very intriguing, the kids as well there. And they approached me, they were very playful and open and honest. And honestly, I found myself sitting with kids and recording a lot of interviews for 3 days. I had my permission back in 2012. It was for a week time and for 3 visits. So I spent the 3 visits talking to kids, recording with kids. And this is how I met Marwa, the main character of Tiny Souls. I met her through these 3 days, and Marwa was very expressive and powerful and open. And when I went back to my editing room to look at the material and edit something from what I recorded, I was watching Marwa and I felt this strong connection to her, and I really wanted to go back to the camp and get to know her better, her family, try to build a relationship. I just wanted to know this family. I didn't had a clear decision of I'm gonna go back, follow this family journey in the camp. It wasn't at all the idea.
It's a very personal film. I think you're explaining why, and it's obvious that you grow a very close relationship with the family also. I mean, how did this influence your work? Did it make it easier or harder?
Of course, I always say like Tiny Souls is a result of this human, beautiful connection and trust. And Tiny Souls came out from this connection. It's not the opposite way. It's not that the film is the main element and the relationship. No, the relationship was the starting point, the strength, the trust that took time to be built, and the transparency. And then the film came out as a result of all this beautiful human connection. Of course, it made it easier in some ways and harder in other ways, because you start to become one of the family, and you are attached to them, and you're in their life and they are in your life. So it's more of a very subjective point of view, let's say. So it was hard and easy in different ways, let's say.
And in the film also, you mention your father's experience as a refugee after 1948. How did it affect you to see these young children going through basically the same experience?
Well, honestly, it hit me like after 2 years of filming in the camp, when I realized all the stories that my father used to tell me about his childhood and Palestine, and the memories that he carried for the rest of his life. as a very vivid memories. And suddenly I found out that these memories kind of and translated to reality to me. It was really shocking. And maybe subconsciously I was going to the camp without really understanding why I'm there and what I'm doing. And it was very subconscious process that was going on in my mind. And then you realize, yeah, history is repeating itself where it shouldn't be, actually. It's like the same exact explanation of these images of Palestine and how people were evacuated from their homes and how they lived in tents and how they were receiving water and food, and there was no bathrooms. And it's like when he talks about Palestine in 1948, he used to tell me, like, you know, in our time it's really hard, but now you will find a lot of NGOs and people to help these people in wars, but in our time there was no one. So it was very touching and very eye-opening for me to see such a reality happening over and over again.
Because you mentioned also your father telling these stories from his childhood and from his life as a refugee. But then you also said in an interview, and I have to read here, in a conflict dominated by adult decisions, these children have been left out of the conversation. And do you feel you managed to bring them back into the conversation? You give them a camera, they can film themselves. What instructions did you give them to get their voice to be heard?
I hope I did. I hope Tiny Souls was a window and a voice for these people to be heard. They present a whole generation of people who flee the war and found themselves in a refugee camps. The camera, why I gave them the camera, it was totally an experimental decision because I was not able to access the camp for a few months and I was waiting for my permission. So I thought, since I'm not there, I would love to experience, if I give them a camera, what's going to happen, because they were always interested in my camera, they were always interested to play with it. So I thought, why not to try one? So I found an old camera in my home, a very old one, so I gave it to them, and I was really amazed about the material when I saw it. It's completely them, it's their space, it's their environment. They are talking, expressing themselves freely without the effect of my presence or my camera presence. So the material was very sensitive and pure and energetic, and of course it represents their soul and inner voice. So I was completely confident that I need this material to be included in the narrative of the film.
You have also described the making of Tiny Souls as life-changing. What do you mean by that? How did it change your life?
Well, I'm not the same person anymore. Since the first day I entered the camp, and I spent there almost 4 or 5 years of my life, I'm not the same person. It affected me in all levels. I don't look to life the same way I used to do. A lot of things changed for me. A lot of values and meanings changed for me. I would say, like, since that experience, being grateful and thankful for everything that I have in my life, I learned that lesson because I saw people without nothing, and I saw people needing for anything to be able to survive. So I was really I'm living in a luxury. I have a bed and I have a shower and I have a home and I have a shelter. So these things, we used to take them for granted. Everything in our life we used to take it for granted. But now, no, I feel the value of everything in my life.
I mean, in the humanitarian world and working with displaced persons and refugees, we often talk about durable solutions, which are either integration into the host society, repatriation, or third country resettlement. And in a way, this is reducing human tragedy to bureaucratic solutions, but these are basically the tools we have at hand to work with. And I mean, a refugee camp, as you have seen also, it's definitely not a durable solution. Still, the family you're following, they start in Zaatari camp, they move out, and then they move back in again into the camp. But what do you think can be done to improve situations in a refugee camp? Because people are not supposed to stay there forever, but we have a situation now where people are living in these camps for 9 years.
There is no solution to improve the situation in the camps. As you said in the beginning, they're not supposed to be there from the first place. Camps are not a place for any human to be. It's not a place for any human to grow. Since 9 years, you imagine how many people were born in such place. We're talking about zero education, zero hygiene, zero environment. There's nothing. It's just a matter of just surviving. And I have to mention that the will of the people, the Syrian people inside the camp, they made a life out of nothing. It was a desert. There was nothing there, scattered tents here and there. But now when you go to the camp, it's the fourth city in Jordan. You will find everything. People manage to create a life out of nothing. So it's the power, it's the will to survive. It's what keeps the people there going. But there's no solutions that I can give you personally that can improve the camp's conditions. The only way is that nobody should be there.
Yeah, you mentioned it's become the fourth largest city in Jordan. 80,000 people live there. And we see your picture of the Zaatari camp as you're trying to get in, you're talking on the phone, get permissions. We see it surrounded by walls and barbed wire. Those are symbols that are very strong here in Berlin where I'm sitting, for a historical reason, of course. But how does it feel both actually to be locked in behind barbed wire? You have these 80,000 people, they have set up a system. I've been to Zaatari myself, I've seen it. But still they are behind walls, and we hear Marwa and her siblings talking about how they, escaping out there. And you are on the other side, you're 100 meters away from them and you can't meet them. How does that affect you?
It's like you're inside an open air jail. It's a very secured area. It's a very sensitive area. And nobody is allowed to go in and out freely. You have to go through a long process of getting the needed papers and permissions. So it was never easy to be there, and it's never easy to go out and come back. So the whole production process was kind of impossible to happen. But sometimes the universe send you some power and good people to help you to do what you are doing. So that was kind of the case for me, to be honest. I was alone, I was doing everything alone, I had no support to back me up. A lot of foreign crews used to go to Zaatari to make a lot of movies, but they were like crew, and I'm alone, and I'm a local, and that makes a difference. So it was really heartbreaking to see all this and try to find power to cope and think and find solutions. Inside your mind, a lot of time I felt like I'm paralyzed. I cannot do anything. I'm just watching and trying to understand what is that I'm looking at. What is this reality?
Because you always, as you mentioned, you had massive problems entering the camps, getting permissions. Still, as you also said, there have been films made in there, there have been crews. Could you talk a bit about the bureaucratic problems you experienced? Why was it so difficult to get these permissions? Was it only because you're a local, or what do you think happened?
No, because there's a lot of security reasons, let's say. And of course, a lot of, along the way, a lot of different management had to take over the camp. So there was a lot of change in procedure as well. But of course, the fact that I'm local, that make a question mark around me, because who you are. And you're not a journalist, you don't represent a special, a clear entity. You're a filmmaker, independent, trying to do something. This is not something common in Jordan. And you don't have a crew with you, so there's a lot of questions around me. And every time I had to go inside, to be honest, I have to fake a new scenario. I bring a letter from my friend in Paris, please send this company and under your name that I can get a permission. Every time I try to get help from friends that can just fake a scenario for me to be able to apply for permissions and enter. In the beginning it was a bit easy because it was a chaotic situation and they were receiving a lot of TV news reporters, journalists, a lot of media as well. So I managed to sneak in in between all this chaotic situation. But later on, it was so strict.
And still, in the end, when they have to leave, you can't get there on time to be with them. And the last thing we hear in the film is a hello from Marwa back in Dara. Have you heard anything from her after that?
After the deportation happened, I lost them almost for. I kept in contact with them for 6 months, and after that, I lost them for 2 years. I had no connection with them. I was asking people in Syria to look for them. I was trying to reach out to anyone I know that can bring me any information about them in Syria. So after all this research, even with all this research, I never managed to get an answer from them. And last September, I received a phone call. I looked at my phone, it was written Syria. And I was like, I know no one in Syria except Marwa. So I picked the phone and it was Marwa. And I was like, what? Where are you? What happened? And they were like talking. She was like, I cannot tell you a lot on the phone. You know why? But we are okay. Two of my brothers had to escape. We don't know where they are. But me and Aya and Mahmoud and my mother, we are okay. We are back in our village. And kind of the situation a little bit better. And she wanted to invite me for her wedding.
For her wedding?
She got married on the 19th of September, yeah, last year.
Fantastic. Well, um,
And since then, we are in contact.
and I mean, really, in the middle of all this chaos and all the human catastrophe that we see that you portrayed so spot on, at least, I mean, that is a positive message that you got contact with them again. Did she tell you anything about her plans for the future? Can you make plans for the future when you're in Syria right now?
No, of course not. The maximum you can think about is from where you get your food, your water, um, and live day by day. They are, yeah. Their village, when I talked to her, she told me it's under siege for like 20 days, and they barely managed to survive day by day. Of course, there's always this threat, there's always this fear of the future, there's always this anticipation of what's going to happen next. They are living in the unknown. But as you said, life somehow has to go on, and you have to have this positive um, action that can make you really go on this journey, no matter how hard it is.
Thank you very much for making the film, for making it available to us, and thank you also very much for this discussion here today. And I think with that, we actually end on a positive note also. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.